For most of his life, Samuel Little was invisible, a drifter that moved from one town to the next, picking up odd jobs, sleeping in his car, and then leaving before anyone thought to remember his name. Nothing about him stood out until investigators began connecting him to a trail of bodies that spanned decades and states. What they would discover was almost impossible to process. Little wasn't just another transient with a violent past. He was the most prolific serial killer in American history. He targeted sex workers, women battling addiction, indigenous women, people society often overlooked, and their disappearances rarely made headlines. It wasn't until 2012, when Little was arrested on a narcotics charge, that the facade began to crack. When investigator James Holland of the Texas Rangers and his team began to look closer, they found a pattern connecting Little to other cold cases across the country. Holland was well known for his ability to get killers to open up about their crimes, and he quickly realized that Little couldn't remember addresses, locations, or timelines. He was terrible at it. But when he talked about his victims, it was like he could see them. Every detail, every face. So Holland handed Little a set of colored pencils and a stack of paper, an experiment meant to unlock what words alone could not. What happened next changed the investigation forever. He began to confess, one murder after another. Little claimed to take the lives of at least 93 women over a 40-year span. And with nothing but his memories and a box of colored pencils, Samuel Little started to draw. One by one, the women he had killed came back to life on paper. Eyes full of life, hairstyles and clothing, the way they smiled, all remembered by the man that took their lives. A woman with a blue dress, another with a pixie haircut and a smile. One drawing depicted a woman with a distinct scar over her eye, a detail her family later confirmed was accurate. The portraits are disturbingly personal. Little didn't sketch out of guilt. He drew because remembering gave him power. He told investigators, "I live in my mind now, with my babies, in my drawings." The FBI released the drawings to the public, turning them into evidence in the form of art. Each face was an unidentified victim waiting to be named. Families who had long searched for loved ones studied the sketches, sometimes recognizing the face of someone they'd lost decades earlier. A missing friend, a forgotten relative. In the years since the drawings were released, a handful of women have been identified. But still, many of the portraits remain unknown. Women remembered only through the hand of the man who killed them. So look closely at the portraits. Behind every single one is a woman with a story, a family, a life. These women deserve to be more than a sketch in an open case file. They deserve to be known. Authorities believe the remaining unidentified victims are connected to unsolved murders that took place between 1970 and 1997. If you have any information that could help investigators, please contact the Texas Rangers by email at rangers@dps.texas.gov or call 512-424-2160. You can also call the FBI at 800, call FBI, or submit a tip at www.tips.fbi.gov. It's a face that has haunted the highways of the American Midwest for over 30 years. A pale man with blonde hair and a bowl cut, and eyes that witnesses described as empty. He is the man in the sketch, the only real clue to someone who, for 4 terrifying weeks in the spring of 1992, carried out a series of murders along the Interstate 70 corridor. 4 weeks that would leave 6 people dead and investigators chasing a ghost. The killings began on April 8, 1992, in Indianapolis, Indiana. Inside a Payless shoe source just off of Interstate 70, 26-year-old Robin Fuldauer was found shot in the back of the head. The cash register hadn't been emptied. Her personal belongings were untouched. Whatever the motive could be, it wasn't about money. Just 5 days later, in Terre Haute, Indiana, at a small ceramics store just off I-70, another victim was found. The similarities were immediately evident to investigators. Same weapon, same style of execution, and this store was also located just off the interstate. Then it happened again and again. By the time the killing ended on May 7th, 6 innocent people were dead. His victims were ordinary people, shop clerks, small business owners, a young man covering a shift for a friend. 5 women and 1 man, all targeted in what seemed like random encounters. There was no consistent age, no link between them all, just the misfortune of being in the wrong store at the wrong time. Police from multiple states scrambled to coordinate their investigations, but they had almost nothing to work with. No fingerprints, no DNA, no witnesses who saw him leave in a car. Just the memories of a few people who had come face to face with the killer and lived to tell it. From those memories, some important details began to emerge. First, witness testimony linked the murders to the same gun, a .22 caliber automatic pistol, possibly an Intratec or an Irma Verka, both small and could have been easily concealed. Then a face slowly came into view. And regardless of the town or the gruesome details surrounding each crime, the same man was being described to police sketch artists over and over again. The same light-colored hair, cut in that strange, almost boyish pageboy style. And those same eyes, cold, unreadable, like they were looking through you. From those details, investigators built their only tangible piece of evidence, a composite sketch. Once the sketch was finished, it was put everywhere. It was printed on flyers, pinned to bulletin boards, taped to gas station pumps, church doors, restaurant windows. For years, anyone with the same haircut or even similar features would get a second look. The sketch became both the investigation's greatest hope and its biggest heartbreak, because it gave the case a face but not a name. More than 30 years later, the paper has yellowed, but the mystery hasn't faded. The man in that sketch walked into stores, killed 6 people, and then just stopped. No more crimes, no more leads. It's as if he decided he had killed enough, then stepped off the highway, back into the flow of ordinary life. But someone, somewhere, knows who he is. Someone recognizes that face. There is a $25,000 reward for information involving the case. Anyone with information or tips are asked to call the St. Charles, Missouri Police at 636-949-3200. He called her Claudia, but that wasn't her name. It's one of the few things Keith Hunter Jesperson, the man who would come to be known as the Happy Face Killer, ever shared about the woman he murdered one summer night in 1992. For years, that name, that small piece of a story, was all anyone had. Her real identity, though, was lost in the desert somewhere along Highway 95, just north of Blythe, California. For more than 30 years, she remained nameless, a shadow among the hundreds of miles of asphalt and sand that Jesperson stalked. In August of 1992, she had been trying to make her way to Los Angeles. She accepted a ride from Jesperson, a long-haul trucker who would use the road as both cover and a hunting ground for his victims. For a little while, they traveled together without incident. But somewhere near a truck stop in Coachella, a disagreement over money turned deadly. Jesperson strangled her inside his cab and drove on, leaving her body in the desert where she would be found on August 30th, 1992. However, her body was already severely beaten and decomposed, unable to be identified at the time. For decades, all investigators had was a handful of details. A woman in her 20s or 30s, a smoker, wearing a motorcycle t-shirt. She had a tiny tattoo of 2 small dots on her right thumb. That's all they had to go on. But more recently, with the help of advanced DNA technology and genetic genealogy, investigators were able to create a sketch of the victim. They were also finally able to find a familial connection, a biological father named Alfonso Sandana Gonzalez. He's long deceased, but his DNA became the first anchor to a life that had, for decades, no roots. That discovery, though, led to another mystery. Investigators found several half-siblings of the victim, but none of them had ever heard of her. Their father, it seemed, had carried his secrets with him to the grave. Her mother's identity remains completely unknown, possibly hidden in family lines stretching across Louisiana or southeast Texas. And so, as of 2025, she remains Claudia, a woman with a father but no name, a family who never knew she existed. Investigators now hold out hope that someone, somewhere, might remember her father, Alfonso Gonzalez. They hope that a long-forgotten story about a relationship he had in the 70s or 80s might finally lead to Claudia's identity and give her back the name that was taken from her all those years ago. Anyone who may recognize her is urged to contact the Riverside, California Cold Case Hotline at 951-955-5567 or email them at coldcaseunit@rivcoda.org. It's an image caught by a motion-activated camera deep in the woods. But this isn't a deer, a bear, or even a bird. Instead, it is the last known image of Rasheem Carter, and it may be the only witness to his final moments. This image has become the center of an unsolved mystery, one that forces us to ask the question, does it show a man lost in an unfamiliar area just fighting to survive the elements, or is it the final moments of a terrible hate crime? In October 2022, Rasheem Carter, a 25-year-old black man and father, took a short-term job in the small town of Taylorsville, Mississippi, about an hour from his home in Fayette. He was the kind of man who made friends easily, always smiling, always working towards something better. But soon after arriving, that confidence turned to fear. Just days into his new job, Rasheem texted his mom saying that he and the owner of the company were not seeing eye to eye. He continued on saying that if anything happened to him, that man would be responsible for it. He said, quote, "He got these guys wanting to kill me," unquote. Days later, he made a frantic phone call to his mother. He told her he was being targeted by a group of white men in trucks and that he needed to get out of town immediately. He gave her the address of a nearby Family Dollar where he would wait for her. But when she got there, he was gone. Then came the photograph. Captured by a trail camera the day after he was last seen alive, it shows Rasheem shirtless, holding a large stick or branch. It looks like he's either hiding or preparing to defend himself. For his family, the image is a horrifying confirmation of their fears. They believe it shows their son in a desperate fight for his life, trying to defend himself against the very men he had warned his mother about. They see a young man cornered and running for his life, just moments before his death. A month later, Rasheem's dismembered remains were found scattered across a wooded property near where the image was taken. Authorities said there was no sign of foul play, suggesting wild animals may have been involved. But his family refused to accept that. They believe Rasheem was hunted and murdered, his death the result of hate. To this day, the case remains unsolved. No arrests have been made, and the investigation continues to drag on. The photograph, the last glimpse of Rasheem Carter, is a critical piece of evidence. If you have any information that could help solve the unsolved murder of Rasheem Carter, please contact the Smith County Sheriff's Office at 601-782-4531. It's one of the most chilling photographs in the history of missing person cases. It shows the last known location of 17-year-old Brianna Maitland. It's where her mysterious disappearance began, one that has remained unsolved for more than 20 years. On the cold night of March 19, 2004, Brianna clocked out from her job as a dishwasher at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery, Vermont. She told her coworkers she needed to get some rest, and that she had a GED test the next morning. She got into her 1985 Oldsmobile and drove off into the dark towards a nearby friend's house, but she never made it. The next day, her green Oldsmobile was found parked awkwardly against the side of a rotting abandoned farmhouse. Not wrecked, not abandoned in panic, but backed into the side of a long empty farmhouse called the Dutchburn House, approximately a mile from her work. At first glance, there were no signs of struggle inside the car, no note left behind, and most importantly, there was no Brianna. Inside the unlocked car, everything that defined Brianna's life was still there. Her driver's license, her glasses, 2 uncashed paychecks, set neatly on the passenger seat. Everything she would need, and nothing that she would willingly leave behind. The only item missing were the keys to the vehicle. Outside the car, there were clues that made no sense. A man's fleece jacket was laying on the ground. A broken necklace was found nearby, as was a water bottle. Since then, the photograph of that scene has been analyzed and debated, but for 2 decades it hasn't given up a single real answer. No one saw her leave her car. No one saw her taken by someone. There was no sound in the night, no witnesses. The FBI is offering a reward of up to $40,000 for information leading to the recovery of Brianna Maitland. If you have any information that could assist in the case, please contact the FBI's toll-free tip line at 800-CALL-FBI or the Vermont State Police tip line at 844-848-8477.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fireside Unsolved. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, take it easy and be easy, you filthy bastards.